Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. And this was a fun interview with our Wayne Steiger, our good friend and family member.
Indeed, and it was really, really wonderful. Some stuff in there you do not want to miss.
No, good stuff. And we have a lot of stuff actually planned with Wayne down the line. Do check out evolutionaryenergyarts.com if you haven't. Learn more about us. And obviously, we want to talk about the prospects of Black Monday. Some are calling it Orange Monday. Yeah, it turns out the Fed announced a closed board meeting for today. Maybe they'll dissolve themselves and just go away. Well, yeah, that won't happen. But that is the reality of what we need. This, again, economic system is in its death throes, and at the same time, everything that you're seeing is very purposeful and planned.
It is, and it's been planned for quite a while. So they're very deliberate in the steps that they take, and I think that's the one thing we need to keep in the back of our minds is they know what's happening next.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get down to it, again, all the mass media, people understand. As when you look to the ratings, CNN and MSNBC barely get ratings above some YouTube channels now. That's just the reality of things. People have woke up to a degree to the fact that it's always just been about pushing a narrative. And all this is part of a big, big plan. And the reality is, if we could just, with our magic wand, just erase the IRS, erase the Federal Reserve System, erase the CDC, WHO, FDA, certainly the UN, the WEF, the world would be a much better place if we could just simply blink them away like I dream of Jeannie.
I think that's a fun idea.
It really is. I mean, things would change just immediately. So Dow futures down 715 last night. They were over 1,000 down. Again, how bad is it going to be? We'll see. But I tend to think that this is not quite the big one yet. But I do think the big one is coming this year. I would still lay money that it's probably in October, perhaps in September, but somewhere more towards the fall. I think that you'll have that big, big switch, and we'll actually see, the economic change of our lifetimes, or at least the beginning of the change. Because, again, there are some good things out there that are being mined, for lack of a better term, for the purpose of freeing humanity from the debt slave system that is in effect and has been in effect all our lives, all our parents' lives, all our great-grandparents' lives. It goes on for a very long time. As you see here, the sell-off in Asian Pacific markets, you had quite a few. The Nikkei, you had South Korea, you have trading halted in some areas. Here you have MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's making a stock market play. Just days before the tariffs were announced, what did she do? She put basically a big 6-digit chunk of money into T-bills, which are not going to pay her a lot of return, but they're relatively low risk. As long as the Treasury stands, you have something. But in these times, at some point in time, will the Treasury stand? What will be left of all this with the big economic changes that are afoot? You have China launching global digital payment network bypassing SWIFT. SWIFT is the system that's been in place all of our lives anyway. And, we have the BRICS nations, and we have those that are aligned with NATO, and then we have everybody else. And the BRICS nations are intent on having their freedom away from SWIFT and away from the Rockefeller Rothschild banking system. And it's bigger than just those two families. But here you have the reality that things are changing. And so, the dollar as reserve currency may not be a given in the future. Absolutely, whether it's digital dollar or not. And, again, you have crypto, which when you look to crypto, everything is subject to the control and distortion of the system, or at least the attempted control and distortion of the system. And I do think the system plans on taking control of as much crypto as they possibly can. And of course, the whole purpose of crypto, from a theological standpoint, so to speak, is to make something that can't be taken over by the big banking system, which has controlled us. And yet they, have their own plans to take over, hijack, and, implement their CBDCs. We understand that, and there's steps to all this. And then the question is, will there still be a free electronic system? How long will the electronics last is a good question, because, again, isn't it curious that you have, 5G, and I don't think that any sort of internet service we've seen and others have seen in like the last year or two is any better than what we had 5 or 10 years ago. In some ways, it seems to us that things go down more often and there's more glitches, especially lately. And that may have all to do with the sun and the geomagnetism of the planet, as well as also perhaps the disintegration of the system itself, as the system is something that was born in the Kali Yuga in a dark age, and I don't think that even 1/10 of 1% understand at all the changes that happen in a new age, in a new Yuga.
No, I mean, there's a lot of different changes, so there's levels to this. And sometimes we're in a place to see those different levels of things that go on in 3D are also going on in the higher dimensions. And sometimes people can see what's going on in the higher dimensions and they might translate it down to 3D. Sometimes you see in the 3D and you translate it to 4D, 5D. So everyone has a different perspective as far as what's going on. And that perspective just seems to fray and get a little more complicated when you go into the Bronze Age. At some point, there's a huge episode where things are so chaotic, they're forced to kind of collapse. But when they collapse to a higher order. So right now we're still in the days of chaos. That's what I see.
Oh, and yeah, the chaos is really going to ramp up. That's just a given. It kind of has to be. Again, with the U.S., you have the trillions of debt. That's not sustainable. And again, that's part of what, at least, the theory is that's part of what's being addressed in the tariffs. Although what's really happening is a trigger. This is a trigger to begin the destruction and disintegration of the old system. They've lit the fuse. I do think it's absolutely 100% completely purposeful, and knowing that it's going to bring about the change in the system, which has to happen. Yet again, you have the dark component, the dark matrix, that wants to hijack any of the infiltration of the light in. So again, when you look to this, what is China's digital RMB? This is again like the digital yuan or the DCEP, digital currency, electronic payment. It's a digital form of physical currency. When you look again to the SWIFT system, this is all about making things faster and easier in an electronic world. Instead of payments clearing in 3 to 5 days, they do it in 7 seconds. And again, when you look to even Bitcoin itself, which is truly already antiquated, but yet there's trust in the Bitcoin, even though the system itself is antiquated compared to some of those that are coming up. De-dollarization, yeah, that's absolutely what's going on in a big portion of the world. And then again, you also have the U.S. doing what it can to maintain its role in the world as the dominant economic force. When you look to Christine Lagarde, she reports that the digital euro is going to launch in October. So China Digital yuan, okay, that's there, and China is leading the way with so much tech because again, it's the poster child for what's to come. Here you have the EU is going to launch their digital currency in October. Again, yeah, track every payment. This is a double-edged sword in some ways because when you look to, and we've been doing some studying on cryptocurrencies and the whole economic situation as well. We've been doing a crash course in understanding this, as well as our usual studies on other subjects. When you look at what cryptocurrency is with the ledger system, and also just the fact that you have so many different computers out there, running these tabulations, it's created with the intent that it can't be monopolized by the banks and the same old cabal. Yet at the same time, they plan on circumventing that. They don't want us having any sort of freedom apart from them. So this is part of where we are. They're going to definitely pull the rug on the system. They plan on creating a complete serfdom slash economic slave situation by bringing humanity to its knees. Where again we're all facing something like the Irish potato famine across the entirety of the world, or a Holodomor type of situation. This is what they're instigating when, again, there's no need for any sort of lack of abundance. There's more than enough. Even if you just freed up the wealth from a couple billionaires, you could just eliminate the world's famine and lack of clean water in no time. This is, and basically just eliminating some of the projects that are making everything toxic in the first place through again using our sweat labor as economic slaves to the system. None of this has to be. This is really the bottom line. Whether we're bartering and trading, on a person-to-person physical level, or whether we're doing it economically with some sort of digital currency, from a great distance, we can have freedom from the system. The system will not allow it because they're just greedy by nature. They're just power hungry by nature. So automatically, we know that this is what they're going to try to do. Yet again, they're on the losing side in the long term. It's navigating this in the short term. And here you have a perfect example. Minnesota Food Bank, this is a nonprofit NGO. The CEO is paying herself $721,000 per year. How do you justify that? This person again is, she might have been reaping this money in this life, but absolutely she's going to have to repay that karmically. And this is again where people don't understand that everything you do, there's a cause and effect, and there's an ebb and flow to things. So all these elites that are, putting one over on humanity, laughing, thinking that they're getting one over, they're only basically paving their way for a lot of pain and suffering for themselves in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much unfairness out there, but to me, eventually it does play itself out, and karma does its thing. I think it's up to us to do the right thing, do the best we can with what we've got. And this is a system that we have to work in. We absolutely have to work in. And I feel if we're diligent, we do our homework, and we're responsible, and we pay attention, and we focus, we can do well. And sometimes it takes people to come together on a honest platform and work with each other to get through the hard spots. And I think that's what we're going to end up doing at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they do plan on absolutely trapping people, yet there are people that are trying to use the system to get out of the system. And meanwhile, again, you can see gold is certainly going up. Silver is undervalued. It's up to everybody to do your own due diligence. Again, we don't give financial advice at all, but we could just share that I think it's a good idea to not have debt to the system. I think it's a good idea to be out of the system's debt slavery as much as possible. Again, this is kind of why we chose to move to a place where we would have a better chance at that, where we could have a better, longer growing system. And again, you can navigate even a short growing system if you have the ability to, again, build yourself a greenhouse, or again, work with neighbors, work with like-minded people, create your own networks to operate in. And again, in our case too, live on a property that's modest enough that in our area we have a homestead exemption that takes care of all the property tax. So, there is no property tax on this. Yet I owned a house in Connecticut that was $6,000 a year at that time, and that was 20 plus years ago. And for 1,000 square foot house, the taxes were so expensive. It was just ridiculous. So again, we all have choices to make. What we are facing this year, in my mind, where all the signs are just obvious. You are going to watch them try to implement the economic system that we've all been talking about for in some cases 30, 40, 50 years. It's coming down, I think, in 2025. And, can it get delayed? Oh, it could. It could, absolutely, because, again, the more people that wake up, the better. And then the more people will be able to prepare for this by creating your own network of friends and family to lean upon. I just thought this was curious. We're receiving, this is from Texas, by the way, multiple reports across rural Texas about large black SUVs, often driven by individuals who appear foreign, slowly canvassing farmland, isolated areas. They're offering large sums of cash, often well over market value, to unsuspecting homeowners, approaching residents directly, asked if their land's for sale. So they're asking again to take photos, make note of it, get as much information and share it out with the public. Because, again, the way things are going right now, BlackRock, Vanguard, again, these type of big, powerful financial entities, which control so many people's, retirement savings, are out there to gobble up properties. And, some have said that they'll have 60% of single-family homes in the U.S. In their asset list. That's just a horrible thing, I think. And again, it's dissolving these big entities. Again, corporation, the root word is the same as a corpse. It's a dead, soulless entity. We need to basically work from a true humanitarian aspect, because again, they'll give you this, we set up this NGO to help poor people over here. And the reality is, again, they're paying themselves $750,000 in salary when doing very little actual good. This is just what the system does, because it's founded on greed in the first place. And look at the flooding in downtown Cincinnati, Ohio. This could be in Brazil. It could be anywhere. Again, it's global what we're watching, and we know what you're doing. And I was watching people making comments, saying we know what they're doing. They're doing this purposely. And meanwhile, 17 people that were working in a Boston hospital have all been diagnosed with brain tumors. Yeah, that's just a coincidence. Literally, an official statement was out there saying, well, it has nothing to do with the location. What? Okay. At the same time, there is a cancer epidemic, which happens to, come after that plague upon the land epidemic. We know what you're doing. You're caught out. I thought this was very, very apropos. On my way to get tested for the same illness that they're ouched. Yeah, there is no logic. There is no logic. Where's the logic in this? Where are the ingredients here for baby formula? Water, glucose, water, sugar. Hello, water, sugar, canola oil. Canola oil is atrocious. I wouldn't give this to any living being. Again, when you look down here now, soy protein, for one, it because doesn't say anything about being non-GMO, it probably is GMO, and it just goes on down the line. There's many other sugars in here besides all that. It's just insanity. Or is it? Is it insanity? Or is it more satanic, diabolical? Like, this. Our chemtrails will blot out the sun. Then we will fight in the shade. That's the attitude we have to have, as the system itself. They are vampires. They are leeches. They are ticks. They are parasites. Literally, parasites. That there's no word that defines the system that we find ourselves in better than parasitic.
I know, looking at the baby formula, the ingredients on the baby formula, half of those things are very hard to pronounce. And if you can pronounce them, most people would have to look them up and see what exactly is it. This is, you're feeding, our children are drinking chemicals. This is not milk. I would look into goat's milk. I would look for a local farmer. I would do anything. But, knowing what I know now, I would never do this. And only because I was a mom and I was not completely in the know. I did do these kinds of formulas. I did my best, but I could have done better. So, we just need to keep that in mind. It's like we can always do a little bit better. And this goat, oh my gosh. Goats, I don't see how you could really keep them in a pen. I really don't. Not if this one can do a high wire act. This guy, he kind of does what he wants and he goes where he wants, and he likes that little bit of green right there. In fact, I don't know what that stuff is. It must be really good stuff for him to climb up there.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a tight wire act that we're going through, and April through October is going to be, probably the most tense economic and geopolitical period I think that we've seen yet. So again, it's maintaining your cool while under pressure, like that goat. It's also basically finding ways to have fun in the system and play. We come here not just to learn, but we are also coming here to play and have fun and enjoy ourselves, like this raccoon. We have a family of raccoons that come every night, along with tons of deer that come, and possums and skunks and all sorts of critters. We have foxes too. It's just, again, nature plays and nature finds a way. And the other thing that's very real is the love, again, from a mother for her child. And you are a child of this earth. This earth is a conscious being. And so that might sound very hippie-ish. Well, it's just basically something that all the indigenous people of the world, before they were taken over by this system, knew inherently. It's just basic knowledge. Basic knowledge. It's not indoctrination. It's not mind control. It's not a psyop. It's reality. She doesn't want to hurt you. Mother Nature is not wicked. And yeah, there are natural cycles that ebb and flow, but you see animals leave an area before an earthquake, before a natural disaster. Why don't humans? Because humans have been traumatized, and they've been cut off from that stream of information that does come from your mother.
And I've just decided I want burro statues in my front yard. This is so cute. That's cuteness overload.
Absolutely. As always, guys, we thank you for your support. Come join us on Patreon, exclusive videos over there. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.